seconds for you to watch me just kind of stare. All right, should be recording. You should get a little notice that says it is recording. So again, welcome to the ILL Roundtable for August. Today I have a couple reminders and then a little bit of trivia for libraries. And then the topic for the meeting is going to be ILL procedures. So I'm hoping people brought all of the really creative procedures that they have. And I just thought we could talk through any questions about library procedures or any Clover questions. So ILL procedures, pretty broad topic. So I didn't know if anyone would bring their own questions as well. All right, so I'm going to start with just a couple reminders. And the first one is that the ILL Courier grant application is open. So if you are on the Courier and you have not applied, please remember to apply. The grants are a little bit different this year, and because of the ARPA funds, we are able to make them non-competitive. So as long as you apply and meet the state requirements, you will get your grant. And this year, we are, for libraries that have one stop per week, we are covering the cost of half the stop per week. So as it's the same as it usually has been. For libraries that have more than one stop per week, we will cover the cost of a full first stop. And I have been sending out announcements about the change in price that is coming in April 2022. And the grant amounts take into account those price changes as well. So I did a lot of math. I do not like math, but I did math for everyone. So that's one reminder. The other reminder I have is actually from Lincoln Library. And my request from them is if you are returning a book to Lincoln Library, please make sure before you put it in the Courier that it came from Lincoln Library in Vermont and not Lincoln Library in Indiana, because they apparently have gotten a fair number of those and then have to mail it back to Indiana. So you could check that when you return it in Clover, just see if it came from out of state or from Lincoln Library in Vermont. All right. And so those are my reminders, very brief, very small. I'm going to open with some trivia because everyone, well, not everyone loves trivia. I like trivia and I am usually very bad at trivia. But since I made this quiz, I know what all the answers are. So I'm going to put the little quiz in the chat in case anyone wants to take the quiz on their own. If you do, and you put your name in there, if you get them all right, I will send you some cookies. I like to bake, and I make good chocolate chip cookies. So I have just put the link in the chat. Oh, and I already have a tech problem. Now I have 2 people I can't let into the meeting.
April?
Yes.
For some reason, I have ability to let people in. I'm not sure why.
Oh, right. Yeah,
I've been doing it because I figured, like, why not? But
there's 2 that are stuck in the lobby, and I've emailed, and I can't get them in.
I have Jenny Cole and Kathy at DRML.
Yes, at Deborah Rawson. Okay.
It says I just clicked admit, and it says it's admitting them.
I know, and that keeps saying action failed.
Yeah, see, I don't see that. I just get this screen where it's saying these people are waiting in the waiting room.
Oh, there's Adrian. Did Adrian get kicked out? This would be the day that all the technology breaks.
I don't know if you're okay with me letting people in. I just figured I'd throw that out there.
I'm happy as long as people can get in.
Fair enough.
All right. Let me send a quick email to Jenny and see.
I have no idea how I have these privileges.
I don't know either. That's okay though. Oh, and Tammy from Springfield's trying to get in as well.
I'm happy to keep monitoring it if you want, so you can focus on this, since I have that ability anyway.
Okay. I'm just sending a quick email. Oh, okay. So I heard back from Kathy. Kathy was able to get in another way. And I sent an email to Jenny. And we will just, yes, if you can check and just let people in, that would be great.
Yep.
And I am going to share my screen, which will have the trivia questions. And we can all go through the trivia together. Except I do have one that I could not build in because Microsoft Forms would not let me use images. So let me find. Of course, I cleared off my desktop, so they are not right there. I have a very fascinating picture that was submitted by Lynn at Kimball, who retired and has left us, but was wonderful to work with. Let me find them. All right. I am going to show you a picture, and I want everyone to try and guess what it is. All right, can everyone see that? Fancy looking trunk with all the different sections. Does anyone have any guesses what this is? No clue.
A spice rack.
A spice rack. Let's see, what did I have? All right, so the guesses, I had this originally planned as a multiple choice trivia, which was, is it for holding laptops? Is it for an exchange library? Or is it for sorting books before shelving?
That's what I think. Sorting books before shelving.
Sorting books. We have one guess for sorting books. That's a very cute trunk. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. Maybe if I can get it to stop sharing. Maybe not. There. I'll do it. All right. I have one more that I'm going to show you. Sorry, I'm working on a much smaller screen than I'm used to as well. All right. And there it is. So that trunk is originally an exchange library, and it is still at Kimball Library where they have it in storage. And my understanding is that libraries would pack the books and trade them off. And if it's anything like how popular card catalogs are with people, those might be the next big hit. All right, so I'm going to move to the trivia quiz. I did share the link in the chat. So let me share this. Oh, and the chat has chats. Let's see. Oh, someone guessed a portable card catalog, which would have also been very cool. And Betsy at Bradford had a bonus quiz question, which is, which Vermont town was the first to charter a library? I don't actually know the answer to this. Kathy says Windsor. Does anyone else have a guess? No one else has a guess. Betsy, which Vermont town was the first to charter a library? Was it Windsor?
It will shock you to hear that Bradford thinks it's Bradford.
Oh.
Even though our building only goes back to 1895.
All right.
Bradford has a library charter from supposedly the first in the state.
Very cool. All right, so I'm going to share the trivia window. Doop, doop. Let's see. All right. So these are the trivia questions. Let me close that. So if people want to yell out guesses, that's fine. I have about 15 questions, and I have all of the answers right in front of me, but they're out of order now. So you can fill it out online. You can just tell me what you think it is. So first off, which of these libraries is a National Historic Landmark? Is it the St. Johnsbury Athenaeum? Is it Bennington Free or Fletcher Free?
Athenaeum.
Gotta be St. Johnsbury.
All right. And everyone is right. It is the Athenaeum, St. Johnsbury. All right. Next question. What year was the State Library created?
1825.
One guess for 1825.
Totally a guess.
All right. Well, I'm going to guess 1830 then, Virgil.
1830.
One of us will get it.
We try logging out and log back in. Thank you. All right, so let me look at the chat. I'm losing all my windows. I have one guess for 1820. And a couple for 1825. All right. It was 1825, and it is actually November 17th, 1825, which if anyone knows Jennifer Johnson, the 17th is also her birthday. So we can celebrate her birthday and the department every year. All right. And next, what was the interlibrary loan program in Vermont called in 1971? Was it Interlibrary Loan? Was it Vermont Book Fetch? Was it Vermont Library Exchange?
Well, I liked Vermont Book Fetch, so I'm going to guess that one.
Vermont
I'm just
Book
going to go with Interlibrary Loan.
Interlibrary Loan.
I think we should change our name to Vermont Book Fetch now, actually.
We'll rebrand Clover as Book Fetch.
Yeah, let's do it.
I got one guess for Vermont Library Exchange. All right, and the answer is Vermont Book Fetch.
Woohoo!
It was launched in 1971, and from 1971 to 1982, the Department of Libraries would publish their catalog and supplements from participating libraries in local newspapers, and then patrons could mail their requests back to the libraries. So,
Wow.
yes, it's an interesting history of interlibrary loan in Vermont. All right. Next, the benefactress of Benton Northrop Memorial Library, Consuelo Northrop Bailey, was the first female lawyer admitted to practice before the Vermont Supreme Court, the first female lawyer to independently try and win a murder case in Vermont, the first elected female lieutenant governor in the United States, or A and C, A and B, or all of the above.
We'll go with C.
Go with C. First elected female lieutenant governor in the United States. Any other guesses?
I'm going to go with B.
B. Okay. Anyone else? No, I don't have any guesses in the chat. Oh, Tracy says A and C. All right. So it is actually all of the above. She was both the first female lawyer admitted to practice before the Vermont Supreme Court, the first female lawyer to try and win a murder case in Vermont, and the first elected female lieutenant governor in the United States. That is a lot of things. All right. Next, how many libraries in Vermont are Carnegie libraries?
4.
I think it's
All right,
4.
4.
I should know this. I work at a Carnegie Library.
The options are 2, 4, and 6.
I think it's 4.
All right, Virgil says 4. Any other guesses? No other guesses. Virgil is right. It is 4. It is Fletcher Free, Fairhaven, Morristown Centennial, and Rockingham. All right. Next up, which library is the, oh, getting some echoes. Which library is the oldest public library in Vermont? Is it Stowe Free Library, George Peabody Library, or the Whiting Library?
George Peabody.
That's my guess too. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Emily from Thetford. The Peabody is the oldest continually operating library building. So yes, it is the George Peabody Library. According to Patricia Belding's book, Where the Books Are, the first public library specifically built as a library was the George Peabody Library.
Huh.
And that book is full of all the best information about libraries. It's fascinating if you ever want to read it.
I just pulled up on the Ilsley's website. We have a brief timeline history.
Mhm.
And I couldn't remember the dates, but in 1848, the first iteration of Ilsley Public Library was formed by a bunch of men who subscribed to the periodicals of the day, and they called themselves the Middlebury Lyceum. And then in 1866, the Ladies Library Association formed their own group because the men wouldn't let them read the newspapers.
Wow. Oh, see, they cannot keep the women from the newspapers.
That's right. That's right.
We'll always find a way. All right. Next trivia question. Who said the only thing you absolutely have to know is the location of the library? Was it Mark Twain, Albert Einstein, or E.L. Doctorow?
Yeah, Albert Einstein, I believe.
It definitely has to be Einstein.
And we put that on an appeal letter at one point.
You're right.
I might have inside knowledge of that one.
It is Albert Einstein. All right. All right, next. How many years has the Bennington Free Library been open in the same location? Is it 107, 156, or 172?
Huh.
107, I'm guessing. I don't know.
Let me check the chat. Oh, McKenna guessed 156, and McKenna is right. All right. Try admitting people one more time. All right. And one more year question, which is what year was the Department of Libraries formed? 1965, 1950, or 1970?
65.
One guess for 65.
1970.
70. All right. The answer is 1970. The State Library and the Free Public Library Service were two separate divisions that merged on March 31st, 1970. So the long and complicated history of the Department of Libraries. All right. Next up is basically a short round of Clover codes, because I'm sure everyone has memorized Clover codes. All right, so first up. Oh, wait, I have one more year one. I forgot I added that in at the last minute. What year did Clover replace VOWS as the statewide interlibrary loan system? 2015, 2016, or 2017?
2017.
I'm going to go with Virgil because he's smart.
All right. Virgil's right. It's 2017. It is going to live forever in my mind. That's the year I started here again, and I started 3 weeks after it launched.
That's why I remember it too, because that was the first year I worked here.
Yeah. We'll
I wasn't
always
even doing interlibrary loan then.
I just remember even when we were having problems when it first launched, I would get emails that said, well, this is not working, but I swear it's still better than the old system. I never had to learn the old system. All right. Oh, and now comes the Clover code lightning round. All right. They're phrased as true, false. And so the first one is the Ainsworth Public Library Clover code is W67. True or false?
False.
Any other guesses?
True.
It is true. It is W67. All right. And the next one.
I think good trivia, April, would be how many of us know our own library code, because I don't.
I thought about making that the last question. All right. The Bennington Free Library Clover code is B42.
False.
True.
It is false. It's B43.
Right.
So close. It was a sneaky one. All right. The Aldenbach Memorial Library, which is in Lunenburg, Clover code is A97.
You go with true on this one. I have no idea.
True.
It is false. They are L97. So you may have noticed the Clover codes will always start with the letter of the town that the library is in. It's sneaky that way, except for us because we moved, but we still have an M code. All right, and the last Clover code one. Oh, I have two more. The Middlebury College Clover code is M58C.
That's
True or
true.
That's true. Middlebury 58 and College. And the last one is the Townsend Public Library Clover code is T66. True or false?
True.
It is true. All right. That is all of my trivia. If anyone ever wants a lightning round of Clover code, I'd be happy to put that together, just in case. I'm going to stop sharing my screen then. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, Rutland got in. Yay.
Now I got frozen it with my woo-woo. Oh, sorry. Is my mic on? I think my mic is on.
All right.
Oh, yeah, there we
And Adrian said that St. J is S22, which it is. If anyone wonders, we are M761C1. Super long. All right. I think everyone might finally be in the meeting, hopefully. Okay. So today's discussion topic, I am going to try and keep an eye on the chat at the same time, and the meeting is being recorded. So if anyone wants to relive the trivia, that is always an option. So today's topic of discussion is the interlibrary loan procedures. And I am hoping that if people have some fabulous interlibrary loan procedure that has streamlined things for them, that you'll share it. If anyone has found a convenient way to go entirely paperless, or if you are updating different procedures at your library, I would just love to get a discussion going on what works for you. What do you think might work for other libraries that you would like to share?
I mean, I go entirely paperless. I don't keep any paperwork.
Okay.
I don't know if you want it. I'm not really prepared, but I mean, I can talk about it, I guess.
I don't think I use any paper either, except for, whatever I stick in the book to denote that it's for a patron on the hold shelf.
I'm considering going that route, and I'm just wondering, does anyone have a reason why I should be printing out requests and keeping them in a notebook? Because I can't think of any reason to.
There is no reason, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, it's all right there in Clover, so.
Yeah, I mean, I keep a spreadsheet and I look in Clover, so I have two places to look.
I mean, we keep a printout of anything that's checked out to state employees, but it's mostly in the event if like Linda and I are both out and someone has a question, they can just go to that folder and pull the request out and see what's going on, because not everyone in our staff has access to Clover. So it's more like just an extra backup that I don't think we've actually needed, but yeah. And Betsy says she also keeps a spreadsheet for all of the loans, as she's the only designated Clover person.
Right. Well, not everybody has access here. I have access. In Middlebury, we split it. I do the requests and managing of our patrons asking for books, and then there's another person who fills requests from you all from our library. So, and then there's one other person who knows how to get into the Clover system. So there's almost always one of us in the building who can get in to answer questions.
Kim says Hartness Library is paper free also. I did have someone email me once and say, well, we have these printouts and we have a spreadsheet and we keep track on this list. Can you tell me why we do that? And I said, no. I think every library finds a system that works for them, but more and more are going towards paper free.
I agree. I mean, what you're saying with like a system that works for you, I think that's the most important thing, because we all have different ways of keeping track of it. Like the person who used to do ILL before me here kept a big long file of all the interlibrary loan requests of the ones going out to other libraries and the ones coming into patrons, etc. And that worked for her, and that was fine because she was the one doing interlibrary loans. I don't do that. I just keep a spreadsheet of everything, and checking Clover, obviously. But I think that's the most important thing to think about is like, if it works for you, why change it?
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't work, or you see like ways you could possibly improve it, that's when you reevaluate.
Yep. I know. There's been, I feel like, a decent amount of turnover in public libraries over the last year. So I think everyone is looking at their procedures to see where they can streamline them.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of follow the same thing that I used to do when I was running a one-person library a few years ago. The only big difference is we have Clover now, whereas when I was doing it before, it was Valve. And that helped streamline it. But even then, like, I kind of had to come up, because of the pandemic especially, you had to kind of come up with a system that was, for me, I had to come up with a system that was slightly different than how I was doing it before.
Mm-hmm.
For one, because like my spreadsheet that I was keeping, everybody on staff had access to. So like I had to make sure that was clear, that information was clear, so if somebody went into that to look at the status of something, that they could tell what they were looking at.
Right.
And that's why you keep a spreadsheet, Virgil, is so that anybody can find out, answer a question at the desk.
Yeah. And for that, and for me, because sometimes it's just quicker for me to just look up. Is that basically a patron just wants to know? Most of the time, it's my interlibrary loan in yet, and by looking at my spreadsheet, I can just look at that and say yes or no. Or if I'm really on top of it, I even update it with saying it's been shipped or whatever. I'm not always on top of that as much as I'd like. But it's just, for me, it's easier just to look in there to be like, okay, yeah, it's shipped. No, it doesn't look like it's shipped yet. No, we're not able to actually get that one, or whatever the case might be. And yeah, it's easier for staff too, because they can just look quickly without asking me.
I'd be afraid that I would forget to update the spreadsheet.
It takes a little bit of habit for me. I mean, especially when I first started doing it, because it was like, I had to remember, like, okay, like this is here. And like when I first started it, I was thinking like, oh, okay, I'll update it when it's been shipped. I'll update it when it's arrived. I'll update it when it's been checked out. I'll update it when they brought it back, and I'll update it when I send it back to the lending library. Honestly, I decided that's way too much work because all that information is in Clover.
Mm-hmm.
So all I do now is when I highlight it when it's come in and I've checked it out to the patron. So that way I release it out. But other than that, now that's all I do.
Right. All right. Yeah, we have 2 people that are juggling interlibrary loans for our state employee patrons. So generally what happens is I send the request and then I print it and it goes in the folder of pending requests so that when it comes in, we can attach any paperwork that comes with it, like the return label, or if they have the, please do not remove book strap, we remove it and save it so we can put it back on. And that way it helps us keep track of any of the paperwork that the lending library wants back as well. That's where we make any notes of, needs to be returned in a box, no renewals, things like that. But we do that for the out of state and in state. And there used to be an even more complicated system that involved like making temporary barcodes for things. And we had this like giant pile of cards that we could use. And they kept getting lost or people would forget to check them in. So the only change I made on that is that when we check something out to our patron, we just make a temporary item. And instead of using a pre-made barcode, I just use the request number. So if it's an out-of-state one, I just use the OCLC request. If it's Clover, I use that number. And then when we check it back in, when the patron sends it back, it just automatically deletes the record. Which was way easier than the pile of fake item barcodes that we had. So it's kind of like a hybrid. It's not quite paper-free. It has the potential to go paper-free, but it's what works for us. All right. Did anyone else have any ILL procedure topics? Anything that you tried that you didn't expect to work super well but did?
We have a question here, Matlin.
Yes.
Hold on.
So I have a question that's not really too procedural, but sort of. So when you're searching, you have interlibrary request from one of your patrons. If the librarian here generally looks it up, they seem to do it through Clover, but not with the search. They don't log in. But when the ILL staff looks it up later, just to make sure, we look it up with the advanced search after we log in. And sometimes there's a discrepancy there. So the librarian, there's been a few instances where the librarian didn't find the item in Clover, but we did. And I just wondered, is there a difference at all between searching just Clover and the outside after not logging in versus advanced after logging in? Or is that just a weird?
That's just a weird thing that happens. Next time it happens, can you send it to me and I can dig into it more?
Sure.
Okay. It shouldn't happen, but sometimes it does, depending on what type of search is being done. I do know that it depends on the connection. Some C3950 connections will search different fields with an all heading search, which is why if you use advanced search and you look up specifically a title, sometimes you'll get more results. But yeah, next time that happens, just send it to me and I can dig into it and see why it's doing that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
Caroline has a question too.
Okay.
Hi, y'all. Just a question about postage. Have you experienced, we were using bound printed matter, and that seems to be going away. I don't know if library rate is the only postage break that we can get from post office. Has anybody experienced that? No?
I have not.
But this is primarily for out-of-state requests.
Okay. I did not know that was going away.
Okay. I'm going to contact our post office to get clarification, but bound printed matter seems to be the cheapest rate out there, and we just wanted to make sure.
So the chat, Tenzin says they're using library rate. Betsy says they're using library rate. Kathy says ask about media mail.
Yeah.
That might be a different rate. We use library rate here.
Yeah, that's what we use.
I think it's somewhat comparable to bound printed matter. It might be a little bit more, but I think it was pretty close. I say this as someone who does not work directly with the post office, so yeah. I could just be making that up.
I've never used bound printed matter before. I mean, the library rate seems reasonable.
Yeah, bound printed matter went by pounds, and it was much cheaper than library rate.
Okay, yeah,
And we have a stamp. You have to stamp the item, the envelope, bound printed matter, and I don't know. We saved quite a bit of money in the past. However, I think maybe they're merging the two. This is what I think Postal Service is doing. And I don't know how often library rate changes. And I think it's a good idea to contact them every year to find out if their rates have changed.
The rates are changing at the end of August.
Yeah. So just a little bit of advice for the cost of shipping, especially for out-of-state materials. And for libraries who don't use the Courier.
All right. Well, I'll make sure to check with our post office and get any information from them also. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask about how you guys keep track of, or if you keep track of, overdues? So I've only just started being the sole person. As I said, I take care of requests from my own patrons. So I have never gone into Clover to run an overdue report. I don't even know if you can or how you would do it. That's one question I have. And then the other question I'm thinking about, I have received what seem to be auto-generated overdue notices to us. And more often than not, those ones that I get, I've already sent the book back quite a long time ago. So in that case, I just reach out to the library and say, my Clover records say yada, yada, yada. And I don't always hear back from whoever I'm contacting. So I'm just curious if you guys do it regularly, or if you just wait until you get these auto-generated notices, or what everybody does with that.
I mean, I just wait until the library emails me directly. I ignore the auto-generated ones. I'm notorious for that. If somebody contacts me directly, like an actual human contacts me and says, I need this book back.
Yeah.
That's when I'll do something. We're also extremely short staffed right now. The person that used to do interlibrary loans here also did overdues. And we haven't, the person that was kind of taking over for that doesn't have time to dedicate to overdues that she would like. So it's kind of just one of those things where I just wait until one of you guys just says, I need this book back. And that's when I'll deal with it.
Okay.
So you can look up what is overdue in Clover. If you go to the request manager, there's an overdue status and you can just see which ones are there. Another option is to go to title browse, and it'll actually show you what status things are in. But you can also, if you click on the little gear symbol, you can add a due date column and then sort by due date. I do that so I check that at least. I aim for once a week. Sometimes I don't make that, just to let patrons know, hey, your due date's coming up and you've already renewed this twice, so I need it back. So I like that one just because then there's like one location that I can go to instead of checking like what's in renewed status and what's in overdue and what's in pending renewals. I generally, since I don't have a huge amount of interlibrary loans, I just take it on a case-by-case basis. I do periodically get the auto-generated out-of-state emails, and then I just forward those to whichever library has borrowed the item. But I do know that sometimes libraries, when the due dates don't match what's in Clover, you'll get an automatic overdue notice. And for those, I hit reply and just ask them, well, the due date I have is this. And they just say, okay. Betsy says she keeps loose track of due dates, but they're smaller. And it does seem like sometimes folks renew in Clover, but not in Koha, so there can be conflicting messages. And Noreen says she will check for the overdues as well and let the patrons know.
Okay, great.
So,
and then I have another procedural question, again, new to the task. I think it's request manager, the not received category.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff that's in there is years old. Is there any way to clear that out?
Are they things that you lent or things that you borrowed?
Things that I requested and I never got, or well, the person before me requested and they never came in.
I think you can delete them. Can't you?
If they're not received, that means they were marked as shipped. If you send me the request numbers, I can see which ones I can clear out.
Okay.
And that will help get rid of them. And just as a reminder, if anyone has any questions about any specific request, just let me know, because Sometimes I can bump them to where they're supposed to be, and sometimes I could just put in a ticket with autographics and make them bump it to where it's supposed to be.
I have a question about clearing things out as well. I love the function where you can mark borrowed items that are complete as, where you can delete borrowed items that are complete.
Mm-hmm.
But I've noticed that you can't delete the completed items in the lending list.
Correct. Only borrowers can delete the completed items.
Okay. All right. So my list is getting a little long to wade through. So what do I do? Do I prompt the other libraries to delete their items?
You could, after 364 days, they should fall off the list as well.
Oh, okay.
They will only stay incomplete for 1 year.
Oh, great.
Just shy of 1 year. So,
Okay.
but if it is getting unruly, we actually had to do that for the out-of-state one. We had so many that were incomplete that if I tried to open it, it would make it crash. So if you do have a lot that are incomplete and it's just bugging you, you can send an email to the listserv and just say, hey, people who have lots of things marked incomplete, can you delete them? Another option is when I send out the best practices every 6 months, I can actually include a reminder that if you don't need that history, you could clear them out. And Noreen has her hand up.
Yeah, I've gone to check to see if the book that I borrowed is checked back in, that I returned. And then I get a notice and I check and it says complete. And then I delete all my information and then I get a notice saying the book is still due. Is that just something behind the schedule or?
Sometimes it's when it has been marked complete in Clover, but not actually checked in their ILS. Sometimes it's where it just happens at the same time and kind of crosses over. Usually if I get that email, I just email them back and say, but it was already checked in. And they say, oh yeah, we'll pull it off the shelf and check it in.
Okay. I had a follow-up, but now I forgot. All right, I'll think of it later.
Okay. And Tenzin has asked if we can chat about renewals and how do you keep track of renewals? I keep track of them in Clover. If someone asks for a renewal, I usually go and look up the request and see if it's been renewed already. And usually I'll ask for a renewal twice and then I tell the patron they can't have another renewal. Does anyone else have a different system?
Unless somebody's waiting for it, I just renew it as many times as they need it renewed.
Oh yeah, for items that we've lent out, I'll just keep renewing. I'm not super fussy on our due dates because I mean, a lot of our stuff is Vermont history. So unless someone is, waiting for it, then I say keep it for a while. Let's see. And Tenzin said, thank you. They don't do anything different. Betsy says she does the same. Lots of people saying unless it's on hold, they just keep renewing. And Noreen said that it looks like she can't automatically renew in Koha. Is there something that she can change? In Koha or in Clover? Koha. Does anyone who uses Koha have any advice on automatic renewals in Koha? I do not have Koha, so I'm not sure about the. Oh.
If you've gone like if it's gone past the allotted number of renewals, you might have to specify, like you'll have to go to the bottom and click that you have to allow another renewal. Because we have Koha, so I think we allow like 2 renewals, and then once it'll say next to the item, no more renewals. So we have to go down to the bottom of the page and click that, yes, we're going to allow another renewal, and then it will let us renew it again.
Yeah, there's an option to override.
The override there.
So you click on override, and then you can renew it in Koha beyond the restriction that Koha automatically puts in, and you can do that as many times as you want to, but you have to keep hitting the override in order to make that happen.
Right. And make sure it's the override and not the check-in button.
Right.
We've had a couple times we've accidentally done that.
Yeah, that's a pain. I mean, if that happens, then you just check it out to them all over again.
Yeah.
And but then you've lost track of, you know, the original record in terms of when they got it. So
correct.
All right. And Noreen says it won't let her renew at all, but I'm wondering if that's just like a user account permission. Do they have different permissions for staff accounts on those?
I don't think.
Can I jump in here for a moment?
Yeah.
The user accounts have different permissions in Koha, so you can set permissions for people to be able to renew or not renew, or to override renewals. Also, the circulation settings themselves can allow or disallow renewals for particular item types. So it's kind of a system administrator issue with Koha that needs to be taken up with whoever's in charge of that.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like that's a setting somewhere in the system. All right. Any other discussions on ILL procedures or let's see, chat. Or any other topics anyone wanted to talk about today?
Is there a place in Clover where I can view the best email address to contact a library about interlibrary loan issues?
Yes, if you go to ILL admin, there is search library information, and you can look up a library by name or Clover code, and it should have all of their contact information there.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. And a lot of times, if it's a request that you've received, most will have a contact email listed in the request.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see that. These are, yes, I didn't see them in the request that I was looking at, but I don't know.
Sometimes they're not there. There's no contact information in the request. I mean, because April, isn't it true that each individual library has to do that with their own profile?
They do. They have to put in a contact email. So it's still dependent on them actually putting it in and keeping it updated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, even a phone number for a library would be good. So sometimes I've just ended up looking them up on the web to find out when they're open and when I can call them. And
yes, we do have the library directory, which has usually a director name and email address on our website. And most of the public ones are up to date. The school ones are a little tricky because sometimes there's turnover there. And 2020, we had so many people working from home that we actually had a staff person who was calling every library to get updated contact information. So that is fairly up to date. All right. And I had one had a question about holiday dates. So in the chat, I am actually putting a link to my Clover tutorials list, which also has a full webinar about using Clover, but there's also a tutorial about the participant record, which is where you can update or add your contact information, like an email address, and also where you can put holiday dates if you are closed so that you do not receive any requests.
We got a question here in Rutland.
Okay.
A couple of questions. First, I wondered if people's post-pandemic numbers are back to normal in the interlibrary loan world, or if they changed radically during the shutdown period. And then for materials, do people generally not loan new materials on interlibrary loan? I know AV, audiovisual materials, that is our choice, but I didn't know if it's sort of the rule not to loan new materials on interlibrary loan. Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Emily in Thetford said their ILL numbers went way up and have stayed that way. For overall system-wide numbers, they are not consistently hitting pre-pandemic, but they're really close to pre-pandemic numbers. So I don't know about individual libraries, but I know system-wide we're nearly back at the volume we were. As for lending, we lend everything we own. If it's new, we'll lend it. AV, I think we only have like 2 DVDs in our collection. We'll lend it. Our only rule is if it's in our Vermont collection and we have 1 copy, we will not lend that because most of them are historic and we can't find replacement copies. For out of state, unless it's been out for at least 6 months, we will not request from out of state because a huge amount of libraries actually won't lend until it's been in their system for a year.
It's a long time.
It is.
The only thing we don't lend is typically things that are on reserve for students. Reference is a case-by-case basis. We loan new items because we want to borrow new items. So.
Does anyone else have rules about new items or AV?
Ilsley doesn't loan or borrow new items or any AVs. I didn't set these rules. They're the ones that were given to me, and we do think of it as new for an entire year.
We do the same thing here in Rutland under the Catamount Loans Network. We don't loan out to even our own consortium for a year, so I would assume that would be the same for ILL.
I mean, I know with the college libraries too, there's the issue with public rights and licensing for some of our DVDs that are in our office collection, and that is restrictive just because of those licensing issues.
Yeah.
Typically, all of those are held in our office collection.
And Noreen says Essex Free does 6 months for new items. And Betsy at Bradford says they lend new items, but if the patrons have something on hold, then they don't lend until their patrons are through. Deborah Rawson, new for 6 months and don't lend.
We're pretty much the same as Bradford.
You'll lend new items, but unless it's on hold.
Unless it's on hold or seems really popular, then we won't. But Mostly a case. I mean, I guess more of a case by case basis, but 95% of the time, we will lend new items.
All right.
I'm curious if people lend entire series of things. When I took over interlibrary loan, that was something that was frowned upon, lending an entire series of something, because they thought the predominant thought was that you wouldn't get it back if you lent an entire series. So, but I've started doing that, and I really have not had any problems with getting things back. So I'm just curious what other people do. Sounds like it's not an issue.
I know. I don't have any TV series, so I have no.
We don't have very
opinion
many,
on this
but
one.
things too, like the great courses, that they'll divide them up into different parts, and I'll, if I'm sending it out of state, I don't want to send them part one and then wait for part one to come back and send them part two.
Mhm.
I just sort of trust that the library that's lending is gonna know their patron, and yeah, they're not going to give them all three parts if they think they're never going to see it again. They'll give them part one there, and then they'll give them part two there. And that's just kind of an assumption I'm making on behalf of, how the library is going to conduct it on their end.
Right.
And it's been fine. I mean, Great Courses is also really good. If you just lose one disc out of their collection, a lot of times they'll just send you a free disc. And audio book companies are getting really good about that type of similar behavior, where they'll replace the single disc at little or no cost.
Betsy at Bradford says they lend series and have no problems, and they do the same strategy of managing on the ground with patrons.
Yeah.
All right. And McKenna is curious how other libraries handle storing the paperwork to return with the items. I have an accordion folder, and we just store it by book title. And that's where we keep any of the paperwork that comes in, any of the return labels that come with it, so that we know where everything for that specific request is right off the bat. What about everyone else? Or do you give them to your patrons with that do not remove book strap on there? We break the rules. We remove it and then reattach it when we return it.
We do that too, Rutland, because they inevitably the patron will take that book strap right out.
Yes. Betsy.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, we also store our paperwork in a box. We just fold it, put it in a box, paper clipped with anything that came in with the book. So pretty low tech.
A pineapple box.
Pineapple box. For good luck.
And Betsy says she has an overstuffed accordion folder that always spills and is super annoying, and she wants to figure out something better. Noreen says they put their book straps over the lending library book straps, and Adrian organizes them by the last name of the patron. So I don't know if you just need a new accordion folder. I have a super sturdy plastic one that works great. It's lasted us a couple years now. And Tenzin says they do the same, but they leave the ones that are like labels stuck on the cover of the book. I do not remove those either. I'm usually afraid to even try, just in case.
I think I've done different combinations of things. If they have a label on their book when they send it to me, I will usually just send it out with that label and their information. But if it comes back without it, I just print out identifying paperwork so that the book goes back with something that just helps on the other end to say, which system this was lent out through and where it's coming from. And so I don't send back stuff without paperwork, because it's just a little more time consuming on the receiving end if you get a book back with no paperwork whatsoever to figure out did I send it out in the state? Did it go out of state?
Mm-hmm.
Because when I take them off and I put them somewhere, then inevitably I forget to put them back with the book when I send it out. So I end up printing something anyways. And it's pretty rare when we get something that's like a really nice, like a sheath that somebody's, bought and paid for that's protective. And I do try to be very conscientious about making sure that goes back with the book.
Yep. Emily says that they keep the book straps on and paper clip the return address label to the book card because they don't barcode ILLs, they make cards for them and then file by date. And Betsy says she has one drawer for all ILL materials, bags, labels, everything. It's kind of a nightmare. And the recent renovations were great for patrons, but slashes the storage and office space. That's hard. Yeah, we have these for our labels and stuff. We actually upstairs in our mailroom have a old library card catalog where all of our mailing labels are stored. Tenzin says that a few of the out-of-state libraries do not have a return label. How can we ask them to send one? I have not had a lot of luck with that. There are a batch of out-of-state libraries that just, I'm not sure if they've missed the memo or just don't like to send return labels. I usually just end up looking up their address and writing it on the envelope.
What we
Betsy
do
does.
too.
Yeah. And if you ever do have one that is out of state and there isn't even an address on it, you can always ask me and I can look up their address in OCLC. But yes, it hit a peak, I swear, 2 years ago where just half the out of state ones were not sending return labels, but they seem to be getting mostly back in the habit again.
Interesting. I wonder what caused that.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Noreen said when she receives a book from out of state without a mailing label, she writes it on the back of the request card when she receives the book because the return address would be on there.
Oh.
It's a good system.
When I send out materials to our patrons and I'm shipping it to their homes, I just staple one of our return addresses. It's just paper, a little label, so that it serves as a bookmark while they have the book, and it has the due date on it, and then it has the return label on the back because they'll be inevitably, some of them mail it back to us. A lot of them are either dropping it at a CCV center or or maybe the Williston campus location, but it's helpful when it's like a bookmark and it tends to stay with the book a little bit more easily. That way they just use it as a bookmark while they have the book, and then they have a label if they need it.
Nice. Tenzin says sometimes she also just cuts it right off of the envelope so she can save the address. That works too. All right. Are there any other ILL procedures, questions? Nothing else. Well, it's been a productive meeting. Well, if we're running out of steam, the next meeting is going to be in November. So, get those birthday cards for the state library ready. Usually I aim for the first week of November. Let me look at the calendar. Does anyone have preferences between Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Because I can aim for specific days.
I think Wednesday and Thursdays would be better than Friday. I try to avoid Mondays and Fridays.
Yeah, Fridays are out.
If it's the first Thursday, you have a meeting.
Thursdays are real good for us.
Yeah.
Thursdays,
These are pretty
not
good for me,
Wednesdays.
usually.
Okay, so Thursdays are the best option for most people. Okay, so
Perfect.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I am going to tentatively schedule us for November 4th, and it will switch back to afternoon. So it will be 1 to 3.
I think you're gonna just keep it virtual, April.
Yes.
Our crew can't make it for the afternoons. That's
You can't make it to the afternoons.
No.
Okay. I have some people that can never make it to the mornings, which is why I switch it back and forth for every.
okay. Yep.
Yeah, we can switch it.
If you're doing the vacillating back and forth, that's fair.
That's okay.
Thank
That
you.
is
Okay.
correct, yeah.
All right.
As long as it's recorded.
Yes. I remember to record them all now. I have Post-its hanging everywhere that say hit record. All right, so I will send out a summary of the meeting and what we talked about and the link to the trivia. And I do not have an overall topic picked for the November meeting yet. So if anyone has anything they think of that they really want to talk about or add to an agenda, just send it my way. And I will send out more details on the November meeting when we get closer. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, April.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
April, while I got you on the line, can I ask you an unrelated question?
Yes.
Regarding the Priority Express bags that are going out and how we were putting the dates on them, does that still need to happen?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
It's helping them in the warehouse.
Okay, great.
Oh,
Thank you.
super.